third graders. I'm so glad you're back today. So today we're going to talk about how to determine the area and perimeter of any rectangle. So you already know quite a bit about area because it's one of our word problem types. So you know for area, we always talk about, we use our hands to show it's the space covered by an object. So any space covered by an object is called its area. For any rectangular object, you also know through the area model of multiplication that you can determine area by multiplying the length, which is just the long side of a rectangle, by the width. And that tells you the total area of a rectangle. So you already know that for any area problem, you just multiply the length times the width, and it tells you the area in square feet. You know that area problems represent the amount of space covering a rectangular object. So we know that we use area in our real life all the time. If I wanted to find out the amount of space covered by this rug, I would multiply length times width, and that would tell me the total area. If I wanted to figure out how much potting soil to put in my garden bed, I would need to figure out how much area to cover. So I would multiply the length times the width. You know that your blankets, if they're rectangular, you could find out how much space they covered if you measured the long side and the short side and multiplied that together. Or any rectangular table, you could find the area if you wanted to buy a tablecloth and figure out how big it needed to be by just multiplying the side lines. Pause the video for a second because you know a lot about area. You know that any rectangle in the whole world, you can find the area by multiplying the length and the width, and that will tell you the number of square units inside the rectangular object. So pause the video and look around the room that you're in and find any rectangular object and think about how you would find the area of that rectangular object. Take a second, my friends. What did you find? So I could find the area of my smartboard if I took a yardstick and I measured the length and the width and I multiplied it together. You could find the area of a piece of paper. You'd probably use centimeters or inches. You could find the area of a table in your house, of your binder, of a piece of paper. What else did you come up with? Awesome. Yes, you guys already know that you determine the area, the number of square units that would cover a rectangular object by multiplying length times width. And remember, area is always measured in square units. And so you have to say the answer in square units. You have to include that unit. So you're showing what you're measuring it in. Okay, so you guys know all about area word problems and you know exactly how to solve them and to include your unit every single time. You also know that each square represents one square unit, whatever the unit is, whether it's centimeters, meters, yards, feet, inches, those are all our units that we measure area in. So we know that area problems represent determining the total area of a rectangular object, and we find that area by just multiplying two sides, the long side, the length, and the width, which is just the side that's shorter. We know, if I had this problem about Jordan got a new book that's 12 inches long and 10 inches wide, what's the total area? The keywords that told me right away this is an area problem were long, wide. Well, for this one it said inches, but if it says square feet, inches, yards, or centimeters, area and square. So I'm so impressed that you already know area word problems. Why don't you pause the video and come up with an area word problem and say it in your head or to a neighbor. Go ahead. Wonderful. Okay, sweet peas. So our new learning today, you guys, is all about perimeter and how that relates to area and how you determine the area and perimeter of any rectangle. Of course, my friends, you already know how to find the area of any rectangle, so we're just gonna really be practicing that and really focusing today on how you find the perimeter. So I'm gonna start by just introducing our vocabulary and then show you exactly how to find the perimeter of an object. So you know area is the total number of space covered by a shape. And another way to consider area is the number of square units that fit inside the shape. So you know if the square units are provided, another way to find area is to just count the square units. Or you can multiply length times width. So area is found, like I just said, by multiplying length times width. Length times width equals area. So let's find the area of this rectangle together. I know they don't have units, let's add some. Let's say 5 inches and 3 inches. And we just learned in geometry that rectangles, their opposite side lengths are equal. So I don't even need these ones written because I know if this side is 5 inches, this side would definitely be 5 inches too. If this side is 3 inches, this would be 2 because their opposite parallel sides have to be equal every single time. So if I'm determining the area of this rectangle, I would multiply 5 inches by 3 inches. The length, the side that's longer, is 5 inches, and the width is 3 inches. To find area, I know all I do is multiply 5 times 3, the length times width. So I know right away, that's one of my benchmarks, that the area of this rectangle is 15 square inches. Pause your video. Why is it so important to say square inches? Think about that. Well, we know it's so important to say square inches because area is always measured in square units. And we know that each side of that unit is equal to one of those units. So each would be equal to 1 inch on each side. So 5 inches times 3 inches is 15 square inches. So I know the area of this rectangle is 15 square inches because area is the space covered. It's measured in square units. And you find area by multiplying length times width. Well, now let's think about our new learning. Our new learning is perimeter. Perimeter. Think of perimeter as the total distance that it takes to travel completely around a shape. The total distance around a shape. So area is about the space covered on the inside of the shape. Perimeter is the total distance that it takes to travel around a shape. We don't include the inside at all. We don't include the area at all. The way that we find perimeter is much different than the way we find area. It's not measured in square units. The way we find perimeter is simply by adding up each of the side lengths very carefully because that would tell me the total distance around the outside of this shape. So for perimeter, you have to add. You have to add each of the side lengths together because that tells you the total distance around the shape. So I know to find the perimeter, I don't multiply like area, I just add each side length. I'm gonna put a check mark so I remember what I've added. Ooh, so I'm gonna add 5, and then I know its opposite side length would also be 5. 5 plus 5. Awesome. Plus 3, and then its opposite parallel side would also be 3. And if I add those together, it's like I'm traveling all the way around to determine the perimeter, or the total distance around the shape. Well, can I make a perfect 10, boys and girls? Yes, 5 and 5, I know that that makes 10. And then I know 3 and 3 makes 6. So always see if you can make the add-ins easier by making a 10 right away. So 5 and 5 is 10, 3 and 3 is 6, 10 plus 6 is 16 inches. You don't measure perimeter in square inches because you're not determining the space covered, you're not covering it, you're just finding the total distance around the rectangle. So you don't have to say square inches because area is measured in square inches because it's the space covered, but perimeter is just the distance around. Think in your head, area is space covered, and perimeter is just the distance around the shape, the total distance. Pause and think to yourself, how are area and perimeter different? Awesome, I hope that you said area is the total amount of space covered, and you multiply length times width to determine the total square units. And perimeter is just the distance around, so you carefully add the side lengths together. Awesome. Okay. Our new learning today, so pay really close attention because this is really really important, and I know you're gonna be able to do this by the end of the lesson. Our new learning today is perimeter. Perimeter. When determining the perimeter of the shape, we know perimeter is the distance around a shape. When determining the perimeter of a shape, you add all of the side lengths together. This tells you the total distance around the shape because perimeter is just the total distance around the shape. It's different than area. So let's say that this is my problem for perimeter. Perimeter is in our real life all the time. If you wanted to build a fence and you needed to understand how much fencing to buy, you would need to determine the perimeter. This is another example of how this could happen in real life. So Mrs. Moore wants to put a border around our welcome wall. It is a rectangle and one side length is 4 and the other is 8. How much material will she need? Well, the key words that tell me right away that this is perimeter is it says around. I know that I'm not trying to figure out the space covered. I'm trying to determine the distance around our welcome wall. Another key word that could tell me if a problem is a perimeter problem is fencing. Because do you put fencing over the whole yard? No, you just put it on the outside, the perimeter of the yard. Border is something you would use a lot to determine perimeter, like I'm putting border around our wall, or on the outside of a rectangular shape. Well, let's see how much material I would need. So it's a rectangle, one side length is 4 and the other is 6. Which side length would be 4? Well, I know my width is the shorter side length, and so this side length is shorter. 4 is shorter than 6. So I know that this side would be 4. The other side length is 6, so this would be 6. Boys and girls, I've run into a problem though. I know perimeter. I would have to add all of the side lengths very carefully. The problem is I don't know this side length. How could I figure it out using what I know about geometry? Pause your video for a second. Well, we learned last time that rectangles, their opposite parallel sides are equal. So if this side length is 6, this one would also be 6. So if you know one side length, you know the opposite side length of the rectangle too. If this one is 4, then this side length would also be 4. So now I can determine the perimeter because I know to determine perimeter, I just carefully add each side length and that tells me the total distance around because perimeter is the total distance around the shape and it's found by adding together all of the side lengths very, very carefully because it's just the distance around. Okay, let's add these. So 6, I always put a check mark so I know what I've already put into my equation. 4, 6, I might have to extend my page. Give me a second, my friends. 4, excellent. Can I make a 10 to make this adding really easy? I sure can. Well, 6 and 4 make a perfect 10. And 6 and 4 again make a perfect 10. And 10 and 10 make 20. I'm gonna double check my work. 6 and 10 equals 4, plus 6 more is 16, plus 4 more is 20. Excellent. So my perimeter, my total distance around the shape is 20. You guys ready to practice with me? So today on Google Classroom, you're gonna find the area and the perimeter of shapes. So we're gonna practice doing them both together. And then you guys will get to do some and send it to your teacher for us to see how you do. So I know area is the space covered. Do that with your hands with me. Area is the space covered of a rectangle. It's the inside of the rectangle. So when determining the area of a rectangle, you multiply the length times the width of the rectangle, and that tells you the total area. Let's give it a unit though. Let's say 4 centimeters and 3 centimeters. Awesome. So I know area is the total space covered. So I'm determining the space covered by this rectangle. For perimeter, I know I'm only trying to find the distance around. When determining the perimeter of the shape, you add all of the side lengths together and that tells you the total distance around. So area is the space covered on the inside of the shape. Perimeter is the total distance around. Well, let's determine both. So I know for this one, area, I multiply length times width. Well, my length is 4 centimeters. centimeters. Take a second and determine the area. What is 4 times 3? You guys know 4 times 3 is 12, but since it's the area, I know it's not just 12 centimeters. We measure area in square centimeters, so 12 square centimeters. Excellent. Now the way that we find perimeter, the total distance around, is much different. Who remembers how we find perimeter? Pause and think about that, please. Yes, the way we find perimeter is we carefully add each of the side lengths. And that will tell me the total distance around the shape, because perimeter is distance around. So I would do 4, and I do those check marks to help me out. Plus 3, plus 4, plus 3. Oh my goodness, Ms. Moore's running out of room. So can I make a 10? Let's see. Well, 4 and 3 is 7. 4 and 3 is 7. 6 and 3 and 3 is 6. I can't make a 10, but I can do this. So I know 4 and 3 make 7. 4 and 3 make 7. And 2 groups of 7 is the same as 7 times 2. So I know 7 plus 7 is 14. So I know the total distance around is 14 centimeters. So I know for perimeter, you carefully add all the side lengths. And for area, you multiply length times width. Would you guys take a second? I know you can't turn and talk, but you can certainly pause your computer and think about this. Compare and contrast how we found the area and how we found the perimeter of this rectangle. What was the same about it and how was it different? I'll give you a second. Pause your computer. You guys are right. So it was the same because we have the exact same side lengths. But what was different about them is you determine area much differently than you determine perimeter. Area, you multiply length times width, and it tells you the total space covered. For perimeter, you just carefully add each of the side lengths. Give yourselves a pat on the back if that's what you said. Awesome job, boys and girls. Okay, let's do one more together, and then you'll actually get to submit an assignment to me by yourself on Google Classroom. So we know when determining the area of a rectangle, you multiply the length of the rectangle times the width of the rectangle. Wonderful. So we know when we determine the perimeter, it's just the distance around, and so we carefully add the side lengths. Boys and girls, some of you might say to me, but Mrs. Moore, we can't add all the side lengths because they're not all there. But you guys know that if you know one of the side lengths of a rectangle, its opposite parallel side is the same. So if this is 7 feet, boys and girls, what would this be? Exactly, it would also be 7 feet. If this was 4 feet, what would this be? It would also be 4 feet. I'm going to write these here, even though I don't need to write them all to solve it for area because I just multiply length times width. I'm going to give us a little more room. So for area, I multiply the length times the width of a rectangle. So I would do my length, well, which side is longer? 7 feet times my width, which is 4 feet. And that will tell me my area, and I know you always measure area in square feet, so I'm already going to put square feet up there. Well, what is 7 times 4? Well, I know, boys and girls. 7 times 4, figure it out, and when you have it, please let me know. What is 7 times 4? You're right, it's 28 square feet. So I know the area is 28 square feet. And it's right in the middle because it's the total amount of space covered. Perimeter we do differently. How do I find a perimeter? When determining perimeter, I carefully add each side length, and that tells me the total distance around the shape. When you're doing this on your own, if you ever get stuck, this page will be right under the resources tab so that you can look at this whenever you want, so you can make sure that you're doing a really careful job. So I'm going to add this very carefully. So I'm going to do 7, okay, plus 7, plus 4, plus 4. Okay, can I make a 10? Well, no, 7 and 3 make 10. But can I get really close to 10? Yeah. 7 and 4 equals 11. And 7 and 4 equals 11. 11 plus 11, I know is 22, but I'm gonna check my work. 7 plus 4 is 11, and 7 plus 4 is 11. 1 and 1 is 2, 110 plus 110 is 2 tens. So I know the perimeter is 22 feet. Your perimeter is going to be different than your area because your perimeter is the total distance around a shape, and the area is just the space covered, okay? There may be times when they're the same, but not always. So you always want to carefully add to determine the perimeter and multiply length times width to determine the area. Remember, if you get stuck, this page will be available on our classroom for you to look at as much as you need. Okay, I'm going to show you what your assignment's going to be. So these are the first two problems. You're going to use scratch paper to determine the area and perimeter of these shapes. Then after you determine the area and perimeter of all the shapes provided, you are going to turn it into your teacher. So you know for area, you would write down length times width equals area. So my length is 4 inches. My width is 3 inches. So my total area is 12 square inches. And for perimeter, you know it's side length plus side length plus side length plus side length. So you would carefully add together 4, and you can put a check if you want, plus 3, plus 4, plus 3. I know 4 and 3 is 7, and 4 and 3 is 7, and 7 plus 7 is 14, so it's 14 inches. Awesome. Please make sure that you include your units. Please also use the helper to check each of your problems, and please turn it into your teacher by the end of the day. Thank you so much for listening, boys and girls. I